I know the exact click people feel when a door closes and you hear a lock flick from the other side. It's like your chest drops an inch and all the air inside you turns to pins. That's what I felt when my daughter-in-law told me she needed a roll of duct tape from the basement. She smiled, handed me the flashlight, and said, "Take your time, Mama Rose." Her voice was so warm it could have melted butter. The warmth didn't reach her eyes. The door swung shut. Then that tiny metallic click. My hand froze on the rail. I didn't even call her name. I just listened. Her footsteps retreated across my kitchen, steady, unhurried, as if nothing in this world could rush her. It wasn't Set. The first time I heard that lock, by the way. She practiced once, months ago, when she pretended she needed privacy to wrap my birthday present. I remember thinking the sound was too quick, too confident for someone who never could figure out these old doors. When you've lived long enough, you learn to pay attention to small things. The empty pill bottles. I didn't empty. The dented tin of cookies that never made it to the church bake sale. The accidental misplacing of my phone in the laundry basket twice. The night my son stayed late at work and I slipped, only to find the rug I never leave by the stairs folded back, like it had been waiting for me. There's a way certain people touch your things like they're already theirs. That way had crept into my house. That's why I bought the little camera. It's not much to look at. Just a cheap, motion-activated thing hidden inside a dusty ceramic angel on a shelf above the basement workbench. The angel's nose has a chip in it. We glued it back on after my grandson dropped it. Nobody ever looks at it twice. That's why I chose it. People ignore what they think is already broken. Down in the basement, the air tastes like pennies and old detergent. I flicked the flashlight on and ran the beam along the concrete. I didn't shout. I knew I wasn't supposed to be heard yet. I put the flashlight down and counted my own breathing in, 2, 3, out, 2, 3. The camera's little red dot stared back at me from the angel's chest. Steady. Recording. I didn't wave to it. I didn't need to. I had already checked it that morning, sipping my tea at the kitchen table, pretending to read the horoscope. Good day to set a boundary, it said. For once the paper wasn't lying. I kept the emergency kit under the workbench. Water, protein bars, a small first aid bag, and a spare phone. The spare wasn't smart, just a flip phone with a prepaid card. I learned a long time ago that smart things can be made dumb when someone wants to turn them off. Old things are stubborn. They cling to life like weeds in a crack. I slid the plastic tub toward me and popped it open. The phone was still there. My hands felt like they belonged to somebody else as I dragged a tiny chair to the foot of the stairs and sat upstairs. A drawer closed. Then another. Cupboards. The rhythm of someone rearranging a life. Let me tell you about my daughter-in-law. She's lovely at first glance, and lovely at second. I don't say that with spite. It's true. She knows how to choose a dress that says I'm practical and shoes that say I could run this place. She laughs at the right time. She smiles when people look. Her name is Lena, and when she married my son, I prayed she would be kind. She was, at first, or she made a great shape of kindness. The day they told me she was expecting, I cried. I imagined little socks on the radiator and Sunday mornings with sticky jam fingers at my kitchen table. When baby Noah came, she placed him in my arms and kissed my forehead. For a while, we were a postcard. Then the postcard got fingerprints. It's a little thing at first. She loved to shop but insisted I pick up the packages because delivery people don't follow instructions. She forgot I keep cash in the top flour tin. She reminded me, sweetly, how I confused dates. "Don't you worry, Mama Rose," she'd sing. "I'm here to help." And I wanted help. After my husband passed, and my knees started their little rebellion, help sounded like love. But love doesn't hide. It doesn't close doors behind you and pretend it didn't. The lock whispered again. Not the basement lock, the front door. Someone left. I stood slowly, moved to the bottom of the stairs, and tilted my head. The house speaks through pipes and vents. If you listen, she wasn't gone. She'd stepped onto the porch for a phone call. A porch phone call is when you don't want the walls to hear you. It was Sunday, just after noon. The church bells had rung an hour before, and my neighbor, Mr. Parker, would be pouring himself another coffee by his back window, the one that faces my driveway. I took a breath and decided not to call him yet. Not with the spare phone. Not until I had a piece of proof I could hold. I pulled the little step stool to the breaker box and carefully flipped the basement light switch off. Then on, then off, counted to 10, and on again. 3 repetitions. If you asked, I'd say it was superstition. Really, it was a signal. 2 months earlier, I told my grandson that Grandma loves to pretend the house is blinking at airplanes. Kids remember the strangest things. Blink 3 times if you want a plane to see you, I told him. The house blinks only when someone important needs help, I added, just like a story. I said it right beside his mother. You can hide a tool inside a game if you're patient. I sat back down, the phone heavy in my palm, and let the camera do its work. The angel's red dot watched. Upstairs, the floorboards creaked near the kitchen window, and I pictured Lena lifting the curtain with 2 fingers, scanning the yard. She'd done that before she pretended to forget to lock the gate. My dog ran out, and my neighbor brought him back, shaking his head like I'd lost all the marbles in my jar. You worry me, Rose, he said. That day I moved the spare key that sits beneath the fake rock. It's now in a place nobody finds unless they live here. You might be asking why I didn't call someone immediately. Why I didn't shout and bang and demand. I could have. I've got a voice that can fill a church when I want. But sometimes the worst thing you can do is rush a slow fall. If someone is pushing you down the stairs 1 minute at a time, you don't jump to the bottom where they want you. You sidestep. You make them show the plan. My son Daniel used to be the kind of boy who collected moss and let them go. He has an accountant's hands now and a crease between his eyebrows he doesn't know about. He loves numbers because numbers behave if you ask them nicely. Life doesn't. When he met Lena, he told me she understood his silences. The first Thanksgiving they brought the cranberry sauce from a jar and squeezed it onto my plate with the ridges still printed, and we laughed until the baby monitor crackled. We were soft then, unafraid. The heart forgets its doors until someone slams one. Footsteps, chairs sliding. The refrigerator opened, closed, a pause. Then her voice, soft enough I had to lean my ear toward the vent to catch it. No, it's Sep's fine. She's Sep's resting. I told you today. A beat. Seps'll be at the office for hours. I made sure. Her tone was casual, like someone discussing weather. Sep's just clearing some space. Sep's get confused. It's Sep's better if I handle it. Clearing some space. I steadied my breathing and let the words pass by me like a cold draft. The camera could hear as well as see. The microphone wasn't perfect, but people tend to speak louder when they talk about you behind a door. They want their lies to sound like truths. Truths whisper. I slid my palm along the floor until I found the small box I keep by the washing machine. Nails, screws, an old screwdriver with a splintered handle. The lock wasn't one I could pick from this side. Not without making noise, but sometimes the point of a tool is confidence. I placed the screwdriver on my lap and pretended it was useful. Maybe it was. Maybe it would make me believe I had more than I did. My knees ached. I stood and walked the perimeter of the basement slowly, letting my hand trail the cinder block wall. Once, long ago, my husband marked our children's heights down here every year with pencil lines. Those marks live under a thin layer of paint now. Ghost tallies. The house remembers everything. It remembered the day Daniel told me we should simplify things with the deed to protect you, Mom, in case something happens. It remembered that Lena stood just behind him, not touching him, her hands folded like a teacher's. I told them I'd think about it. I told them I'd talk to a friend at church who knows a thing or two. I went to bed that night and stared at the ceiling until I could recite the cracks. A truck passed outside. The house shivered. My throat felt dry, and I twisted the cap off a water bottle from the emergency kit. Down here, time doesn't keep normal hours. A minute can be an afternoon. I watched dust float in the flashlight's beam and listened to the deep old hum of the freezer. Another voice upstairs joined her. A man's low, "Not my son." Words blurred, then sharpened like someone bringing a lens into focus. "Papers?" the man said. "In the blue folder," she replied. "Top drawer. She labels everything. Makes it easy." The man laughed, a short, flat laugh. "Your husband one sec care?" "He will be grateful," she said. "She should sef been in assisted living months ago. It's sep's a danger. He knows." There's a particular kind of rage that feels like a cold hand placed on your neck. It doesn't make you shout or shake. It steadies you. It makes everything very, very clear. I put the water down, very gently, like it could break. The camera's red dot stared on. Calm as a heartbeat. I flicked the basement light off and on again 3 times. If my grandson remembered the game, and if he happened to be at the window across the street coloring his dinosaur book like he often did on Sundays, he might tug at his babysitter's sleeve. He might say, "Miss Aaliyah." Grandma's blinking the house, and Miss Aaliyah might call Mr. Parker. And Mr. Parker might look out his window and think, "That's odd." And he might go to his porch with his coffee like an excuse and look a little longer. A domino row of small mercies. I took the spare phone and dialed a number I keep folded in my wallet. He answered on the second ring like he always does, a voice textured like gravel. "Parker," I whispered. "Rose, you all right?" "Are you looking at my house?" I asked. A pause. "I can be," he said. A shuffle. A door. Air. I sep him on the porch. "What am I looking for?" "Visitors," I said. "Not my son." Blue sedan. Parked crooked. A beat. Not Daniel Sips. "No." My fingers pressed the cold of the screwdriver. "Would you do me a favor? Don't set knock. Don't set come over. Just sit a while." He was quiet. The way people are when they put pieces together. "You want me to call someone?" "Not yet," I said. "If you see anyone carry boxes, just notice that Sips all." "All right," he said slowly. "But if you don't sit here for me in an hour," I said, "call our friend at the precinct." "Understood." I closed the phone before it could feel like a goodbye. Upstairs, a drawer slammed. "It's not here," the man grunted. "It's Sep's here," Lena said. A slight impatience now. "She keeps everything in systems." "I told you." "Systems. Yes, I do." The blue folder they wanted used to be in the top drawer. It held what every older woman is always told to keep organized. Deeds, insurance, beneficiaries. People say beneficiaries like it's a blessing. Sometimes it's a map. I had moved the blue folder 2 days ago. Because on Friday, when Lena brought me tea and stood just behind my shoulder as I sorted mail, I felt her eyes pause on that drawer, the way you pause on a cookie you're pretending not to want. You don't need to catch a hand to know it's reaching. The folder now lived inside a cardboard box, labeled Christmas lights, taped shut. It was too quiet a hiding place to be clever, which made it perfect. Nobody tries the milk carton to hide a diamond. "I say I'm calling him," the man said. "No," she said. "He sips at the office. He can sit leave the clients. You sit, I'll spook him. We do this gently. She sit, I'll be fine." I don't know what it is about the way certain people say "she," like it's a package on the porch that could be moved to one side, like a thing, like you. Footsteps crossed the kitchen to the basement door. The knob turned. I tightened my grip on the screwdriver, even though I knew it was nothing. The lock held. The footsteps retreated. My knees throbbed. I thought about my husband's hands, how he used to fix everything with patience and a small hum, like he was tuning the world. I thought about the day he hid a $20 bill in the pocket of my winter coat for emergencies, and how I found it years later and cried into the lining. Some loves leave spare change for you to find. I stood and walked to the far corner of the basement, where the old cedar chest sits under a rain-stained window. I lifted the lid and the scent of wood and a winter 20 years ago wrapped around me. Inside was a quilt my mother sewed, a stack of photographs, and a brass candlestick with a dent from the night my son knocked it over playing pirate. Under the quilt, tape-wrapped and padded like a relic, was the other thing I'd changed 2 days ago. The little safe that used to sit in my bedroom closet. It was nothing special, but sometimes the idea of a safe is enough to make people look there first. Let them. The real valuables live where your memories do. I sat on the floor and unfolded the quilt on my lap. Ice fabric warmed my legs, the faintest tremor of fear rose, the kind that makes you want someone to put a hand on your shoulder. I put my own there. You can learn to be your own comfort. You can learn to speak gently to yourself, without using your softest voice to excuse a bad thing. The phone rang upstairs. "Hi, darling," she answered. Notes of syrup. "Yes, I left you a plate. Don't worry about Mom. She's napping." A pause. "I'm just tidying up." You know how she gets overwhelmed. She listened, murmured. "Of course I'll bring the papers later for you to sign. It's just safer if we put it in both our names. For her." I closed my eyes and let the words wash over me, not because they didn't sting, but because I wanted the sting to carve something useful. The camera watched. The angel didn't look away. There's a sound houses make before something changes, the tiniest groan like a stretch. I heard it then from the front hallway, the scrape of a box sliding. The man again, heavier than I thought. He puffed. "Careful with that," she snapped, then softened. "It's Ep's antique." "You plan to sell it?" he asked. "Not yet." She lowered her voice. "After." The word sat in the air like a pinned insect. I stood, my joints complaining, and crossed to the old workbench. A roll of painter's tape lay there, sticky with dust. I tore off a strip and wrapped it around the screwdriver's handle until it didn't bite my skin. The gesture felt embarrassingly small. But sometimes doing anything at all keeps your hands from shaking. I didn't hear the house blink this time, so much as feel it, a pressure change barely there. Then, from somewhere outside, the sharp peal of a child's voice carrying across yards, not a cry, a call. My grandson has a way of making a name sound like an invitation to a game. He sang like we were playing hide and seek. My throat tightened. If Miss Alia had walked him to the sidewalk, if Mr. Parker had wandered to his mailbox at the same moment, if the blue sedan's driver looked up, it's funny how safety sometimes builds itself like a bird's nest from sticks of coincidence. "Close the curtains," Lena hissed. "Relax," the man said. "No one's watching." "Everyone's always watching," she said, and I almost laughed, because she was right and she was wrong in the exact wrong way. I took the spare phone, flipped it open again, and scrolled to a number I hadn't used in months. My friend from church, the one who works reception at a law office and knows which questions make people answer more than they intended. I typed a message with clumsy thumbs. "Need you to call me in 20 minutes exactly. Ask loudly about the deed. Put me on speaker." Then, because she's the kind of friend who needs the why to move quickly, I added, "Hidden camera is recording. You'll see." The phone beeped. Message sent. "We should rehearse," the man said upstairs. Papers rustled. "Just in case." "In case of what?" she snapped. "In case she a pause. In case the story needs to be clean." A chair slid. A throat cleared. Then Lena's voice, practiced and crisp, sent a chill through the floorboards and into my bones.
911?
"Hello? It's my mother-in-law." I think she wandered out. Sip's been so confused lately. We said been trying to get help, but she refuses care. I sipped terrified she sips hurt. She let her voice crack at the end, just enough to sound real. She'd practiced that too. I stared at the angel on the shelf. The tiny red dot stared back. I raised my chin as if I could look it in the eye. Let it record the quiet. Let it record my face. Learning something it didn't want to know but would not forget. The basement suddenly felt smaller, the ceiling lower, as if the house had leaned down to hear better. The basement door hinges sighed. Footsteps on the top step, then slowly the lock turned. Metal in metal. The door opened an inch, then two, and a shadow cut across the stairs. Not my son's silhouette, taller, broader in the shoulders. He descended one step, then another, the air cooling around him. "Hey there," the man called into the dim voice sing-song as if coaxing a cat from under a couch. "Mama Rose? You down there? You okay? We were worried about you." I didn't move. I didn't answer. I let him come into the light that pooled near the bottom stair so the camera could see his face. He took another step, then another, and for the first time all afternoon, I smiled. Not big, just enough to settle my own heart. "Careful," I said softly, lifting the screwdriver just enough for the metal to catch the light. "The floor down here is full of surprises." ChatGPT said. He stopped halfway down, the soles of his shoes whispering grit. Up close he was the kind of tidy that thinks it proves something: neat beard, crisp jacket that didn't fit this house, eyes that scanned like they were pricing things. He tried on a soft smile, and it didn't fit either. He lifted his empty hands to show he was harmless. Harmlessness is a costume. It always has a seam. "Lena was worried," he said, tilting his head, letting my name roll around like he sept practiced it. "She asked me to check on you." I stayed seated, the screwdriver light as a pencil in my hand. "She could have called down," I said. He spread his fingers in a shrug. "Phones die. Doors swell. Houses creak. We all do our part." "Do you have a part?" I asked. "Or a cut?" He blinked once, just long enough to tell me the word cut found its mark. Then he smiled again, tighter. "We just want you to be safe." "What sep's your name?" I asked. He glanced over his shoulder like the answer might be written on the wall. "Tom," he said. "Too quick, too easy." "Well, Tom," I said, "there's sep's a camera on the shelf that sep's very fond of the truth. Say hello." His eyes flicked toward the workbench, a glance more than a second long. If you watch closely, you learn the difference between surprise and confirmation. He stepped sideways, blocking his profile from the shelf like someone who didn't mean to stand in front of a stranger at the movies. "I kept my face the way you keep a tablecloth smooth so the glass won't tip." "Cameras make people nervous," he said lightly, but his voice had lost its sing-song. "They make mistakes. They also keep mistakes from becoming stories," I said. "Which is why I like them." He descended 2 more steps and stopped at the bottom, just far enough that if he lunged, he'd have to commit. People show themselves in the gap before a choice. "Let sets get you upstairs," he said, palms out again. "There's sep's good light. It's sep's stuffy down here." "It is," I agreed. "Hard to breathe when someone else is using your air." He made the mistake of glancing up toward the kitchen. I heard a soft clink of glass against wood. Lena moved, impatient again. Her patience is wardrobe deep. I learned that yesterday watching her fold towels like they were arguments, sharp and even. My phone buzzed. 20 minutes exactly. Bless friends who carry watches in their bones. I flipped it open, pressed the green button, and lifted it so the little microphone could sip our air. "Rose," she said. Loud enough to travel. "It stips me. I got the notary ready for Tuesday, and the copy of your deed with your name on it alone. You said you wanted to keep it that way. You good with that?" Tom's face changed a half inch. Upstairs, a glass stopped clinking. I didn't look at the camera. I looked at him like I was just a grandmother who sometimes needed a friend to repeat things slowly. "Put me on speaker," I said into the phone. She did. "I'm here," she continued, voice round and sure, each word landing like a nail. "And just so you're comfortable, I told Officer Mills at the precinct you'd been getting pressured to add names you don't want on that deed. He said any sudden changes could look like elder coercion. He said to write that down. Elder coercion." Tom's shoulders raised not even an inch, then lowered. The sound of slow breathing through someone else's teeth slid down the stairs from the kitchen. I pictured Lena's hands squeezing the edge of the counter so hard the knuckles went ivory. "Thank you," I told my friend calmly. Let's talk through it again. The house stays in my name. No signatures today. Anyone who tries to remove documents without my permission is trespassing. Yes? Yes, she said brightly. And as we discussed, you have the updated safe deposit box arrangement. No copies in the house, only placeholders. Also, our office line is recording, like always. The basement felt less small. The air didn't change, but my lungs did. "Appreciate you," I said, and closed the phone gently, letting the words linger like lavender. Tom tilted his head, considering which smile to wear now that the first had wrinkled. "That sounded planned," he said. "It is," I replied. "So is Sunday dinner. So is planting tulips in November so you have something to look at in April when you think winter will never leave." He shifted his weight. "Nobody wants to take anything from you, then why are your hands empty?" I asked. "Men who come to help bring tools or casseroles." He laughed. That short, flat laugh from the kitchen. "You stare sharp, Mama Rose." "Knives dull if you scrape them on the wrong bone," I said. "Stop calling me Mama Rose like you grew up in this house." "Fair enough." He glanced up the stairs again as if waiting for a cue. I decided to give him one. I stood, slow enough to look my age, quick enough to remind him I wasn't a chair. I moved to the breaker box and pretended to study it, my shoulder turned so the camera could see my hands. I flicked the basement light off and on twice, then left it on, then off again. 2, 1, off. Not the airplane blink. A different pattern. For years, my husband and I had a game. 2, 1 off meant send the kids to the neighbor. I had told Daniel once, absent-mindedly, while telling a story about a storm. Some parts of childhood build a quiet ladder in a son's brain. I couldn't be sure he'd climb it today, but ladders don't stop being ladders because someone pretends the wall changed. "Lights acting up?" Tom asked. "Old house," I said. "It remembers better than I do." He took one careful step closer. We stood 3 body lengths apart, the way people do when they haven't decided whether they're visiting or invading. Upstairs, a chair scraped. A door closed. Then Lena's voice, smooth again, calling down the stairs without opening the door wider. "Is she okay?" Tom didn't look at me. "She seeps fine," he called back. Chatty. "Bring her up," she said. "She needs her medication." I let a small silence sit. "What medication?" I asked the air. "The one you moved from the cabinet to the trash last week." She didn't answer. Of course she didn't. Silence is an answer with perfect posture. Tom cleared his throat. "Let's not make this harder than..." "Then what?" I cut in. "Then stealing in daylight? Then practicing a 911 call about a woman who has been here the whole time? Then moving boxes you didn't set by?" He lifted his hands again, palms out. That costume was getting threadbare. "We are here to help your family. You can keep a house this size by yourself. Be practical." Practical. The word some people use when they want to dress their hunger in a suit. "You know what's practical?" I asked. "Knowing the sprinkler valve is next to the side door. Knowing Mr. Parker keeps a spare key to my gate because he fixes it whenever it groans. Knowing my neighbor's babysitter calls her mother every hour on the hour and mentions what she sees without realizing she's making a log." From upstairs, "Enough." Not a shout. A thin sheet of steel. The door opened the rest of the way, and Lena came down 2 steps, just enough to appear in the camera's line. She'd switched to the face she uses at charity dinners. Compassion arranged like flowers. She held my son's sweater across her arm like a flag she could wave if needed. "Mom," she said. That sugar voice back. "I sting sorry if I scared you. I asked Tom to check, because the stairs have been hard for you lately. I should warned you. That's my fault." I let her kindness sit in the air like a smell. Waited for it to fade, It did. Bring my blue folder, I said. She blinked. What? Bring my blue folder, I repeated. From the Christmas box, we can sit at the table, and you can read aloud what it says about whose name is on the deed. Then we can call Daniel together and put the phone on speaker, and you can tell him you rehearsed a 911 call about his mother wandering away. Then you can tell him who Tom is and how you met him and why he knows where you keep my documents. Tom's jaw worked. Lena didn't look at him. That told me a lot. If a plan has a general, it isn't the man who thinks Tom is a name that will do. I think you set tired, she said, softening the consonants, making me into something that needs tucking in. You set mixing things up. Am I asked, and reached to the workbench. I slid the angel a fraction. So the lens faced her full on, then rested my hand on the bench like it was a porch rail. Then say the words I did not lock you in the basements into the air so the walls can hear them. If they're true, they won't stick to you. She didn't say the words. Above us, the front door opened. Not, careful, familiar. The sound a key makes when it belongs. My son's steps, he has a rhythm. I could pick it out of a parade. The house tightened and then exhaled. Lena's face didn't change. Her shoulders did. Mom? Daniel called, voice cautious. You downstairs? I am, I answered. Bring your good eyes. He came to the top of the stairs and saw us arranged like a staged photograph, the kind you look at later and realize the dog was staring at the wrong person. His gaze went to me, then to the half-closed door, then to Tom, then to the camera's little red dot. He saw it. He always did catch small things. He used to find pennies like they were hiding from other people, pockets of copper luck. Hey, he said to no one and everyone. What's going on? Lena pivoted to him with a relief you could bottle. Oh, thank God, she started, but I lifted a hand and her sentence ran out of road. Before we start, I said, voice steady. Would you mind closing the front door? I don't want the whole street to hear family talk. My neighbor across the way would hear anyway. Sound travels through cracks on purpose. Daniel hesitated, then nodded, disappeared for a breath, returned. He descended 3 steps, stopped beside his wife. He didn't touch her shoulder. His hand stayed folded in front of him like he was waiting for a verdict. Mom, he said carefully. Lena says you got stuck down here. Lena says many things, I replied. I like to show you something instead. I pointed at the angel. It's been watching all morning. He squinted at it, then at me. He opened his mouth, closed it, then turned toward Lena. Why is Tom here? He asked. The crease between his eyebrows deepening, the one he doesn't know he has. Tom is helping, she said quickly. The boxes. Tom is going to take a step up, I said, looking at Tom. So he steps in better light. Face the workbench, please. Speak your name clearly. He didn't move. Daniel's eyes flicked back and forth, then sharpened like flint near tinder. Who are you? He asked Tom. Voice flatter than I'd heard it in years. Tom lifted his chin. I SEP, with Solutions Plus. We help with transitions, downsizing, asset management, those kinds of asset management, I repeated. Sates elder coercion sit into the air, dear. See if the word turns your tongue wooden. He smiled again, patient, practiced. No one is coercing anyone. Upstairs, a phone vibrated against a hard surface. Then Mr. Parker's voice floated through the open kitchen window, too familiar to be accidental. Danny? That you? Door was open earlier. Thought you'd want to know there's a fella with a blue sedan been up and down your porch carrying boxes. Didn't look like a mover. Looked like a... He paused, rummaging for a word he knew would land, visitor doing errands inside other people's houses. Daniel Siff's shoulders stiffened. Thanks, Mr. Parker, he called, not taking his eyes off the basement. We Siff got it. All right, Parker said. I set them right here if you don't set. I love neighbors who say things sideways. It lets people keep their dignity when they pick them up. Daniel turned back to us. Why was the door open? He asked Lena. I stepped out to call your client, she said smoothly. You couldn't set talk, remember? And you asked Tom to what start moving things. He asked. Clearing clutter, she replied, shrugging slightly. Your mother gets overwhelmed, and we needed the kitchen table for the papers, the insurance update. Insurance? I murmured. I don't know if she heard the smile on the word. Okay, Daniel said slowly, the accountant shifting columns in his head, adding, subtracting, trying to make the math look like it used to. Mom, can we come up and talk? We can talk wherever the truth fits, I said. Right now it fits here. He rubbed his temple, a gesture that belongs to a boy who used to get headaches when he read in the car. Why do you have a camera down here? Because I like remembering things exactly, I said. Because I read the paper and saw how many stories begin with someone telling a different story about a woman like me. Because I didn't want to be a headline called "See Confused." Lena exhaled. This is ridiculous. What Sep's ridiculous, I said, is practicing a 911 call. Say the word said. I didn't sept if you want, or don't set. Daniel Sef's head snapped toward her. What is she talking about? She rolled her eyes just a fraction. She misheard me on the phone. I was saying if she ever wandered. Loud and clear, I said. You have a gift for projection. His gaze slid from her to Tom to me to the angel, and came back with a question in it. He didn't want to ask. He asked it anyway. Did you lock her in? No, Lena said instantly. The lock clicked, I said. My old bones don't make that sound. Old locks click, she replied. Everything in this house clicks. Good, I said brightly. Then you one set mind if we listen to the clicks together. I reached under the workbench and pulled out the small HDMI cable I'd taped there last month, the one that fits the cheap camera's port. I kept an old monitor on the shelf, the kind garages use. I plugged, twisted, waited. The screen winked awake with a menu as ugly as a 90s sweater. I navigated by muscle memory. The latest file hovered. I pressed play. The first frame was a slice of my kitchen floor, my slippers shuffling toward the basement door, the edge of Lena's dress in the corner, her hand on my elbow, her smile like a stage light, her voice, "Take your time, Mama Rose." The camera angle is terrible for makeup and perfect for intent. The door closing. The lock sliding. The long breath that houses take when they're asked to hold a secret. No one spoke. Tom's face did something quick, and then very still. Daniel made a sound like someone stepped on the tail of a lie in his head, and it yowled. Lena watched without blinking. It's a talent. Not blinking, it makes people think you're unafraid. Really, it means your eyes don't know where to land when the truth walks in. The video showed footsteps upstairs too. Voices. Not every word, but enough. Clearing some space. Heavier than I thought. Not yet. After. The rehearsal. Hello 911? It sips my mother-in-law. I paused the video, the frozen frame catching her mouth half open on the word confused. Now, I said quietly, we can go upstairs. Lena moved first. Quick as a creature who knows the trap is sprung, but believes she can sprint out of frame. Tom didn't move. He looked at Daniel like the measurement changed, and he'd brought the wrong tape. Daniel stayed still too long, and I wanted to take his face in my hands like he was 6 and scraped his knee. I didn't. Some comforts are insults when a man is trying to stand up in his own room. Mom, he said finally, voice hoarse, in a way I recognized from the year after his father died. I said I'm sorry. I shook my head. Save it for later. We have some lifting to do. We went up in a careful procession. Me, then my son, then Lena, then Tom. The kitchen looked like a thought half acted on. Drawer half open. Blue sedan keys on the counter. The good bowl of apples moved nearer the door as if apples go better with a getaway. I took my place at the table where we have birthdays and soup. I set the camera's tiny screen where everyone could see it and didn't press play. I didn't need to. It was enough that it could. My friend's words about the notary floated in the room like a perfume I actually liked. "Here's what happens next," I said, folding my hands. "Daniel, you're going to call Officer Mills. Put him on speaker. You'll tell him we have a situation in progress, that your neighbor witnessed a man carrying boxes without your presence, that your wife rehearsed a false emergency call, and that there is video of a lock engaging when it should not. Then you will ask him how to proceed in a way that protects everyone's dignity while respecting the law." Lena laughed then, a bright little chime that would have been pretty over tea. "Oh, come on. This is family business. We don't need to." This stopped being family business the minute you used the word "sit" after. "Sit," I said. "Gentle is a way to be. It isn't sit a way to hide." Daniel swallowed. He picked up his phone. His thumb hovered. He looked at his wife like he had once, when he asked if she wanted the window seat on a plane, and then noticed she was afraid to fly. He looked back at me. "Call," I said, not unkind. He did. He said the words. He got the advice you get when you use words like trespass and elder coercion and video evidence and neighbor witness in one breath. Calm, clear steps. He listened like a man stepping on clean stones across a river. While he spoke, Lena's face went through seasons faster than the sky. Spring charm, summer heat, fall brittle, a touch of winter. When he ended the call, she straightened. "Daniel," she said softly, putting a hand on his arm finally, "the way a person touches something they want to keep, you know your mother. Shep's always been dramatic. She hates change. You asked me to help. Shep's been helping." He looked at her hand, not moving to cover it. "I asked you to love her," he said, "not move her life around like furniture." Her eyes flashed, that little lightning that tells you the storm was always there. "I am loving you," she said, through teeth that barely let sound out. "I am building us a future." "You don't build futures in other people's attics," I said. "You don't build them with someone else's keys." Tom exhaled like a man whose lunch break ran long. "I'll get my things," he said, and took a step toward the door. "Wait," Daniel said. Voice firm now, the boy with the moths gone, the man with the numbers arrived. "You still sit until the officer comes by, or until he says you can go. You still give him your last name, not the one you invented for grandmothers." Tom sat. Lena looked at me then. A look that tried to find a soft spot and bounce. "Where would you be without me?" she asked. And she meant it. That's the thing. She believed the question like a prayer. "In a house that clicks," I said. "Where it should." Outside, a sprinkler hissed to life in someone's yard, the kind of ordinary sound that makes crisis look strange, like it wandered into the wrong movie. My grandson's laugh floated over it, high and busy. The oven ticked, the little cools and warms of a metal box that has fed us all. The angel on the workbench downstairs kept its red dot steady, watching nothing now but space. I watched my son see the room. Not just the objects in it, but the lines between them. The bowls his grandmother gave me. The coat rack his father built. The blue sedan key fob facing the wrong direction, as if it belonged somewhere else. I watched him take off his wedding ring, turn it once, and slide it back on, like he was telling it to sit up straight. "I am calling a lawyer after the officer," he said quietly. "We are going to make sure Mom's wishes are written in words no one can move." Lena smiled her smallest smile. "You'll regret this," she said. So soft it hardly made it to air. "I regret that I didn't blink when the house did," he replied. He turned to me, and his face softened at the edges. "Mom, do you want a cup of tea?" "I want the one that tastes like forgiveness," I said. "But I take chamomile." He nodded, moved to the kettle, filled it like a man doing more than boiling water. I looked at Lena and, for a second, saw the girl she might have been if fear hadn't taught her to take more than she was given. I saw a house somewhere in her past that didn't blink because no one was watching. It didn't make what she'd done smaller. It made the room bigger. I tucked that away with my winter 20s and my angel cameras, not because I'm responsible for it, but because I don't want to forget that people arrive with boxes you can't see. The front door knocked. 2 knuckles. Polite? Mr. Parker doesn't knock like that. That polite knock belongs to a uniform who doesn't want your dog to bark. Daniel looked at me. I nodded. He opened the door and the officer stepped in, hat under his arm, eyes doing that quiet sweep good men's eyes do. "Afternoon," he said. Heard the house was blinking. He stepped into the kitchen like he'd been here before, because he had. Officer Mills has eaten a slice of my pecan pie on Thanksgiving, when his patrol ran long and he didn't want to go home to a cold plate. He nodded to me, to Daniel, to the angel camera on the table, as if a ceramic with a red dot were another neighbor with news. "Afternoon, Miss Rose," he said, his voice a steady porch light. "Daniel, Masipam." He nodded once at Lena. "Sir." His eyes settled on Tom long enough to register a name-shaped blank space and keep moving. "Let's take this slow and careful." I liked that. Slow and careful. Not because I needed someone to tiptoe, but because when people say fast, what they mean is sloppy. And when they say careful, what they mean is I intend to remember. Daniel gestured to the little screen. "We have video," he said, and I heard the way the words steadied him. "Evidence is a leash on panic." Mills pulled a small notebook from his breast pocket, a habit from a time before phones took notes. "Walk me through what happened in your words," he said, eyes on me. "Then we sell watch." "We were in the kitchen," I said. "I was asked to get duct tape from the basement." The door closed, the lock engaged. Visitors entered my house, who are not my son. There was discussion about papers, about moving items, about calling 911 with a story that would change the shape of me. I made calls of my own. I signaled for help, and I recorded. He wrote while I talked, a little scratch that made the room feel like it had edges. "Were you stopped from coming upstairs?" he asked. "I was not stopped by a person," I said. "The lock did that work." He nodded, checked a box in his head. I couldn't see. "Any injuries?" "Only to the part of me that suspects people are better than they are, when no one sets looking." He allowed one corner of his mouth to lift, then leveled it again. He turned to Lena and Tom. "Names for the report?" "Officer," Lena began, then smoothed irritation off her face and tried again, softer. "I Sep Lena Carter. This is my husband Sep's mother. We had a misunderstanding. She gets overwhelmed, and I was trying to organize the—" He lifted a hand, not rude, just a palm that said, "Let me drive." "And you?" he asked Tom. "Thomas Reed," he said. The last name came out like a hat he didn't like, but agreed to wear indoors. "Relationship to the family?" Mills asked, pen still moving. "Consultant," Tom said. "Logistics and estate transitions. I have a business." He smiled like a business. "Licensed?" Mills asked. Tom blinked. "It Sep's more of a—" He glanced at Lena and found no help there. "Network." Mills made a small noise that reminded me of the sound an old radio makes between stations. He turned back to me. "May I see the footage?" I pressed play. We watched the scene unfold on the tiny screen. My feet on the threshold, the door, the lock, the apartment of sentences that moved in upstairs without a lease. Mills didn't interrupt. When the video reached the rehearsal of the 911 call, his hand paused on the notebook, then continued to move. When the neighbors' voices drifted through the window later, he let a long breath out through his nose. Not a sigh. A measure. He tapped the screen off when it was enough, not when it was everything. "All right," he said, looking from the image of me on the screen to the live version at the table. "Here sips where we are." Lena crossed her arms the way you do when you're about to get a winter you didn't dress for. Tom looked at the door, then back. Miss Carter, Mills said, choosing each name like a tool, you cannot lock someone in a basement. You cannot remove documents that aren't yours. You cannot plan to bring in outside parties to move property without the owner's consent. And you cannot rehearse a false emergency call about a person's well-being. Each of these things alone is a problem. Together, they draw a picture I'm obligated to take seriously. It was a mistake, she said. Soft again, palms open, the performance back. I panicked. She forgets things. I thought. Stop there, he said gently. If confusion is part of today, it isn't set hers, it's set yours. She shut her mouth, and for the first time her eyes darted around the room like they were looking for exits. Mr. Reed, he continued, you are not family. You are not a licensed mover. You are not a bonded estate planner. You are someone who entered this home without the owner present and moved property with her downstairs. That is not a thing we do. You'll be providing your identification and waiting, while we figure out whether you leave on your own or with a piece of paper in your pocket, telling you when to come back to answer more questions. Tom's patience slid off his face and broke on the floor. This is ridiculous, he muttered. But he reached for his wallet. He knew what air felt like in rooms like this. He'd breathed it before. Mills looked at my son last, which is the way to look at a man who has to step into a shape he didn't choose today. Daniel, he said, use of the first name, a small bridge. You're going to state very clearly what your mother wants and what you will and won't allow in your home. Then you're going to make a plan that involves locks and lists and probably a lawyer. I can stand here while you say the words, if that helps. Daniel swallowed, nodded once, and in that single nod I watched the boy who used to hide a bad grade in his sock become the man who wasn't hiding anything. Mom, he said, turning to me, voice steadier than it had been 5 minutes ago, I will not allow anyone to move your property or access your documents without your explicit consent. I will not change any insurance or deed paperwork unless you ask me to, and your attorney confirms it in writing. I will not bring third parties into this house without you. I will change the locks today. I will set up cameras if you want them. I will ask Mr. Parker to be our neighbor witness on anything big. And I will make sure our finances are separated from any action that puts you at risk. Is that what you want? Yes, I said. The word felt like a clean sheet snapped over a messy bed. He nodded. Officer, can we? Let me finish the housekeeping, Mills said, opening his palm toward Lena and Tom. I'm going to step into the other room with the gentleman here and collect information. Miss Carter, you'll sit where I can see you through the doorway. You'll not touch anything until we finish our little list. Understood? She glanced at Daniel, measuring her odds and finding they'd changed. Understood, she said. Mills and Tom moved to the hallway. The murmur of questions and answers began, the kind that sound like a deck being shuffled. For a moment, the kitchen belonged to quiet sounds. The kettle, forgetting then remembering how to boil. The neighbor's sprinkler hiccuping and settling. A fly changing its mind near the window screen. I watched my son brace his palms on the countertop, arms straight, head lowered. He used to stand like that after soccer games, counting the blades of grass until the stitch in his side eased. Daniel, Lena said, voice smooth as a brochure, you spare letting this get out of hand. Think about appearances, a police report, over this, your clients. He didn't set turn. My clients done sat live here, he said. He straightened, looked at her, and that crease between his eyebrows was a canyon now. You locked my mother in the basement. It was a mistake, she said again, as if repetition could carve it into truth. I didn't set mean. He lifted his hand the way the officer did, a calm stop sign. There sips a difference between not meaning to and meaning not to be caught. Her mouth parted just a fraction. I did all of this for our future. He glanced at me, then back. If our future needs my mother Sep's house to stand, it's Sep's built wrong. I could have cried then. I didn't. Some tears are a tax you pay to the wrong moment. The kettle clicked off. He poured water over tea leaves like a man building a bridge with steam. He set a cup in front of me. The good chamomile, not the dust at the back of the tin. He sat. He didn't take Lena's hand when she slid it halfway across the table. She let it rest there anyway, ridiculous and heartbreaking, like a flag planted on someone else's land. Mills returned with Tom, who had shed some belligerence and looked tired in a way that belonged to him deeper than his jacket. "All right," Mills said, tucking the notebook away. "Here, Seps, today. Seps, map." He spoke in steps, each one a small stone a person could stand on. Tom would leave with a notice to appear if the district attorney thought there was enough here to consider an attempt at theft or unlawful entry. He'd be escorted out today. He would not take anything with him that he didn't bring. He would not return to my address without permission. Lena would remain while we finished collecting basic statements. There would be a formal report. I could pursue a protective order if I wished. If anything went missing, the report would be amended. He told me which numbers to call and which desks to ask for, if a voice on the other end tried to send me to a line that rings without answers. He did it like a man who knows the difference between a phone and a net. "Do you want a protective order?" he asked me finally. I looked at Lena's face. There was anger there. Now yes, but also a terror so old it had learned to dress up as entitlement. I thought of my grandson's laugh outside, his dinosaur book, the way he counted house blinks. I thought of contortions and kindness, of doors and the sound locks make when they think no one is listening. "I want one that covers my house and my papers," I said. "And I want my door to remember my key." He nodded. "We shall start it." Tom stood, glancing at the camera one last time, like he resented how small it was for the trouble it caused. Mills gestured toward the door. "I said I'll walk you." Tom looked at Daniel. "No hard feelings," he said, trying for a truce in a language he didn't set speak. "It sets just work." "Get a different job," Daniel said. They left. The house breathed different. Space returned to corners it had been pushed out of. Mills lingered, hat still under his arm. "Miss Rose." "I sipped 'em going to ask a favor," he said. "Not for me, for you. Let someone stay with you tonight. Locks can be changed quick. Fear doesn't sit always move out as fast." I nodded. "Mr. Parker will growl at anyone who breathes near my porch," I said. "And my friend from church knows how to pray loud." He smiled, small and real. "We salt patrol by. If you think someone sits telling a story about you that you don't recognize, call us before you correct it. Make us part of the truth." "I will," I said. He set a card on the table. There were 3 numbers on it, not the usual one. This one gets me. This one gets dispatch. This one goes to the desk that answers after 5 because they like the overtime. Use the 3rd if the first 2 don't do their job. "I'm going to bake you a pie," I said, before I could stop myself. "Save it for Thanksgiving," he said, easing the tone of the room. "You know I prefer pecan." He left with the sound of a man not rushing, which is all I needed from him now. We didn't speak for a full minute after the door closed. Silence isn't always a void. Sometimes it's a room where words get their coats. "How long?" Daniel asked finally, not looking at his wife. She traced the lip of her water glass. "How long what? How long have you been planning to move things around without telling me?" Her finger paused. "Since your father died," she said. Then quickly, "Not like this. Not this exactly. Just, since then I knew we had to be careful. I knew if we waited your mother would become—" She stopped herself and chose a softer word like a couch pillow. "Fragile." "I am not glass," I said. "I bend. I do not break." She looked up at me as if seeing my face from a new angle, the one the camera had. "You have no idea how hard it is," she said quietly. "Men like your son don't get promoted because they're kind. We need leverage, security. Everyone else is doing it quietly, and I'm the idiot who said the quiet part out loud into your angel." Her voice cracked. Then, but not at the end like a practiced call. It cracked in the middle like a sidewalk. Someone had been walking over too long. For a breath, I saw the person under the plan. Then I remembered the lock and put her back into her consequences. "Leave for a few days," Daniel said. "It wasn't a question. Take Noah to your sisters. Give me time to think. Do not come back without me here. Do not touch any more of my mother's things. Do not call anyone about insurance or deeds or wills or anything with a capital letter. We'll talk to a counselor and a lawyer and a priest if we have to, in that order." She stared at him like he spoken a language that predated hers. "You still choosing her over me?" He shook his head. "I am choosing the person who taught me not to steal," he said. "And I am choosing the person I am in this house." She stood, grabbed her bag, and went to the hallway. At the door, she paused, looked back with that tiny, dangerous smile that lands like a thumbtack in a carpet. "You shall see," she said softly. "You shall wish I finished what I started." "Maybe," he said. "But I shall be able to sleep." She left with the careful slam of someone who wants you to know they could have slammed harder. The house didn't flinch. Daniel and I sat in the kitchen with the tea cooling and the camera's red dot turned quietly toward the fruit bowl. He put his head in his hands for a long time, and I let him be the son who lost and found himself on the same afternoon. When he looked up, his eyes were wet, but the rest of him wasn't. "I failed," he said. "No," I said. "You learned where the floor is." He exhaled, shaky. "How did I miss it?" "You didn't want it to be true," I said. "People mistake not wanting for not seeing. They not the same." He nodded. "I used to think the house was magic," he said, a small smile, "that it could tell when I was lying about brushing my teeth." "It can," I said. "It knows your mouth isn't set mint." He laughed, wiped his eyes with the heel of his palm, and stood. "Locks," he said. "Locks," I agreed. We spent the afternoon doing small things with big meanings. He called a locksmith who owes him a favor, and the man came with metal and skill, and the kind of humble pride good tradesmen wear like an apron. He changed the front, back, and basement door locks, installed a deadbolt I could manage. He showed me how to press a tiny button on a key fob to alarm a quiet chime if any door opened. He didn't talk much, which I appreciated. The new keys were smooth in my hand, potential and promise. Daniel boxed the boxes that didn't belong to us and put them on the porch. Mr. Parker wandered over under the pretense of watering his peonies and stood guard like a man who enjoys having a job. He didn't ask for details. Men like him get told things without being told. I called my friend from church and thanked her for the loud words. She said she'd keep her phone face up all week. I told her I'd save her a slice of pie she didn't want because she only ever eats half and then steals cookies when no one's looking. She said to shut up, and I told her to bring milk. We made a list on the good stationery. Lawyer, Tuesday. Bank, Wednesday. Doctor, Thursday. To have a note about my mental acuity that could be slapped on a desk if anyone suggested the word confused into a room where it didn't belong. Copies of the video file, saved on a portable drive, my grandson thinks is a toy rocket. Single accounts checked and passwords changed. A note to talk to Noah. Not about his mother, not like that, but about games you play with house lights, and when to tell a grown-up, and how telling the truth is how you turn on all the lights in a house at once. When dusk came, the kitchen turned lavender, and then gray. Daniel made dinner like my husband used to. Scrambled eggs, toast, a slice of tomato with salt. Men who don't know what else to do feed you, and that's a kindness I respect. We ate quietly, and then not quietly, because quiet is a condiment, not a meal. He told me a story about a client who tried to deduct his golden retriever as a security employee. I told him about the time I hid a laundry quarter in his shoe every Friday for a year, and he never noticed because his feet grew at the same speed as my secrets. We laughed like people who earned their laughter today. Night arrived on schedule. He called Noah to say he loved him to the moon and back, and then further to the junk drawer, and my grandson giggled the way children giggle when they think grown-ups have discovered some secret map in the kitchen. Daniel didn't mention his mother. He didn't need to. Love knows when to leave a blank space for later. "I'll sleep on the couch," he said after dishes were done. "You sleep in your old room," I said. "There are spare sheets in the hall closet because I am practical." He nodded, surrendered, and went to make up the bed with a competence that made my heart ache. I stood alone in the kitchen for a moment after he went down the hall, my hand on the back of a chair that has held 1,000 elbows. The angel on the workbench downstairs would be blinking its little light at nobody. I turned off the tea kettle, turned it on again to watch the tiny orange glow, turned it off. The house made its night noises. The fridge's long exhale, the tick of cooling metal, the sigh a roof gives when it stops holding the day. I went to the back door and opened it a crack. The night smelled like grass and asphalt and a neighbor's grill still warm. Mr. Parker sat on his porch with a book he doesn't read past page 10. He looked up as if we'd arranged it and lifted his mug in a salute. I lifted my hand back. No words. We'd used a good number today. I locked the door with a new key and felt something in me settle. Locks are a poor substitute for trust, but they're a decent stand-in while trust gets its coat. In the morning I woke before the birds fully committed and made coffee with a steadier hand. Daniel was at the table already, hair pointing in 3 directions, his face 30 and 6 at once. He had my ledger book open and was making a neat list in his own handwriting, contacts, dates, account numbers. He wasn't taking over. He was witnessing. There's a difference. You can feel like a hand on your back instead of on your shoulder. "Sleep?" I asked. "Enough," he said. "You, like a woman who expects the door not to open without her say-so," I replied. He poured me coffee, kissed the top of my head in passing the way he used to on school mornings when he wanted me to sign a permission slip, and we began calling the world to tell it our new schedule. The lawyer's office slid us into an afternoon slot with the same speed my friend's voice buys when it lands on a receptionist's ear. We sat in a room that smells like paper, that's serious and talked about words that make people behave: durable, soul, revocation, capacity. I signed and initialed and asked questions that made the young attorney blink and then smile because he didn't expect a grandmother to understand the difference between a beneficiary designation and joint tenancy without asking for a glass of water. He printed. I folded. Daniel bought a folder that would not be blue and labeled it in block letters that would not be inviting from across a room. At the bank, the manager remembered my cinnamon rolls from the time the power went out and we warmed ourselves with pastries and cash drawers. She moved us to a cubicle with a door. We moved accounts that needed moving, added a note that would require a live voice to validate me, set up an alert that would sing if anyone tried to become me on paper. At the doctor, I sat on the crinkly paper and answered questions with the kind of clarity that makes nurses grin. Spell world backwards. Draw a clock. Remember 3 words. They always pick apple, penny, table, like the universe only has 3 interesting objects. I asked if I could pick my own 3. The nurse laughed and said, "Sure." I said, "Trust, lock, threshold." She raised an eyebrow. I remembered them at the end of the exam without trying. We returned home with the late afternoon sun doing that generous thing it does when it makes even dust look like grace. The house smelled like us again. The blue sedan had not returned. The porch had 2 packages on it, and Mr. Parker had set a sticky note between them that said, "Call me if the boxes talk back." We didn't talk about Lena. That sounds like avoidance, and it was, but not the bad kind. Some conversations ripen overnight. We gave it till evening. When we finally sat, it was at the same table with the same cups and the same camera now quiet in its ceramic. He spoke first. I loved her because she made silence feel less like a room and more like a blanket. he said. I didn't realize the blanket could smother. You loved her, because she seems easy to love when people are looking, I said. Maybe she said I'll learn to be easy to love when they aren't set. That seps her work. Not yours. She's Noah's mother, he said, as if reminding the kitchen of a fact it might have forgotten. She is, I said. And she will remain that even when she is not your wife. If that sips the way it goes, your son will learn that people can be two things at once. He already knows the house can blink and still be a house. He rubbed his jaw, a gesture from his father Sepp's mirror. Do you hate her? I took a long time to answer. Hate is a loud word. It rings if you set it on a hard surface. No, I said. I don't want to like her choices. I once let her make them in my kitchen. But I don't want to hate the girl who believed taking is the same as keeping. He nodded, looked relieved and disappointed both, and we left it at that. A week passed, and then another. Systems grew like ivy. Slow, then suddenly they were everywhere. The deed lay in a safe deposit box, whose key sat heavy in my purse. The lawyer had filed documents that use words like irrevocable, which is a word that feels like a good lock. The camera got a sibling in the hallway, because siblings watch each other when parents are tired. I baked 2 pies and gave one to Mills, with a note that said for overtime and the other to the bank manager, because paper deserves sugar sometimes. No blue sedan idled on my curb. A glossy envelope arrived with a logo that said Solutions Plus in letters that tried to look kind. I put it in the shredder with a polite hum. Lena sent a message through Daniel's sister asking for a meeting at a cafe. We agreed on a table near a window where you can't hide a hand under a cloth. She came dressed like Apology, neutral colors and a face scrubbed of gloss. She sat and loosed a breath and looked older than she had the week before, which is the price of certain stories. I sep not good at being wrong, she said without prelude. I wanted to say it first so you don't have to peel me to get there. Thank you, I said, because thanks belongs to the first right thing even if it arrives late. I am going to talk to a counselor, she added. Eyes on the table, about control, about fear, about why I thought safety looks like owning what isn't spent mine. Good, I said, add a lawyer to that list. Make the divorce clean if that sips how it goes. Keep Noah Sips world soft. She nodded, lips pressed. I don't know how to be a villain, she said, half smiling, like she knew the irony. I always thought I was the one rescuing everyone. People who think they rescuing you are dangerous when they decide you drowning, I said. Learn to ask if anyone wants a hand before you grab their shirt. She huffed a laugh that had no joy and stood. You recorded me, she said, but she didn't say it like an accusation now. She said it like a fact that saved her from something worse. I did, I said, because I like remembering things exactly. She nodded and walked away, not like a woman banished, but like someone who realized the room she was in belonged to someone else. That's learning. Slow, but it sticks. Weeks afterward, after papers were signed and keys replaced, after the house hummed with its old tunes, I moved the angel from the basement to a shelf in the living room, not to watch for trouble, to watch the ordinary. My grandson learned how to wink with one eye, and he used it on me like a magic trick every time he wanted a cookie. Daniel started using coasters again because he remembers wood stains make me dramatic. The dog stopped flinching when the door closed and started barking when it opened instead, which felt right. One afternoon in late September, I was in the garden pretending to know what deadheading means when Mr. Parker called over the fence. Your house blinked in the daytime, he said, mock stern, but against the rules? No rules, I said. Just signals. You need anything? He asked. Just you, I replied. Right where you are. He raised his mug. I raised my shears. We looked ridiculous and perfect. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a pen that writes smooth and a sheet of paper that asks to be filled. I wrote 3 sentences across the top and underlined them like gospel. Trust is not a feeling, It's a history. Locks are not a failure. They're a boundary. If you hear a click, decide whether it's yours. I taped the paper inside the pantry door where only the people who cook will see it. I poured myself tea that tastes like forgiveness and held the new key in my palm until it warmed. The house didn't blink. It didn't need to. It was quiet in the way places are when they're kept on purpose. If you were to ask me what I learned, I'd tell you this. Love is not keeping your door open for anyone who says they're family. Love is teaching your door your voice and your neighbor your blink. Love is buying a cheap camera and hiding it inside a chipped angel because people ignore what they think is already broken. Love is returning upstairs with your dignity like a loaf of bread and slicing it for anyone who comes hungry and honest. The next Sunday, my grandson colored dinosaurs at the window and held up a green one with a grin and shouted, "Grandma, he sips roaring," and I said, "Good, my love. Tell him to roar at anyone who moves apples that aren't seps theirs." He giggled, and the sound filled the house in the way steam fills a kettle, soft, inevitable, a prelude to warmth. I looked at the door, at the lock, at the angel, at the table, and thought, this is a good room, kept. This is a house that remembers exactly. This is a life that, when locked from the outside, can still find its own key from within. Later, much later, when the story had already begun turning into a thing you tell only when the room can handle it, I took the ceramic angel down and held it in my hands. The chip on her nose caught the light. I thought of all the times I've hidden the right tool inside the wrong-looking thing. I set her back with a pat that would seem silly to anyone who doesn't live in a house that listens. Then I turned off the kitchen light, and before the room went fully dark, I blinked it. Once, twice, a pause, just to say goodnight to anyone watching, not as a signal for help this time. As a signal for peace. A month later, the house had its fall smell, apples and warm dust, and the sharp little note leaves bring with them when they insist on coming inside on your shoes. I was kneading dough when Daniel walked in with a look I recognized from his report card days, ready to hand me something and watch my face as it opened. He put an envelope on the table and slid it toward me with 2 fingers. "From the court," he said, "about the order." Paper doesn't tremble, but hands do. I wiped the flour off mine and broke the seal. The words were what we wanted them to be. The perimeter drawn in ink, the promise that a door wouldn't open just because someone leaned on it. The officer's notes were there too, clean, spare sentences that did more work than their size suggested. I read it twice. Then I folded it and put it where everything that keeps breath steady goes, the pantry shelf behind the tea. Daniel watched like a boy who wanted to see if the monster under the bed had learned manners. "You good?" "I sep'm good," I said. "We did the grown-up thing. It seps boring and beautiful." He exhaled and smiled with the side of his mouth his father used for relief. "You're going to hang it on the fridge like a kindergarten drawing." "I'm going to hang cookies in the oven like a bribe for all parties," I said, and he laughed the small laugh people do when their shoulders remember how to drop. After lunch he went to pick up Noah from school, and I sat with my ledger and my pen and the kind of quiet you earn. I wrote down 3 more things beneath the sentences I'd taped in the pantry. Talk first, film second if needed. If you're frightened, use your feet. Tell the truth before it has to be extracted. Then I heard the front door and a square of light tilted across the kitchen floor as the afternoon stepped in on its toes. Noah barreled in with the velocity of a decision already made. He had a library book pressed to his chest and a question ready to fire. "Grandma, can a house have a secret handshake?" he asked without hello, which is its own kind of hello. "It can," I said, "but only if everyone who lives there knows it." He set the book down and climbed into the chair like a sailor scrambling up a mast. "Can ours be 3 blinks at night and 1 in the day?" "That seps a very flashy handshake," I said. "We might attract planes." He leaned forward. "Good. Then the sky can help." I could have cried right there. Kids make reliability out of imagination, and it seps a better engine than fear. "All right," I said. 3 at night, 1 in day, but we still keep the phone part too. Secret handshakes are better with loud backup." He nodded. satisfied, and slid the book toward me. Dinosaurs again. Some loves are consistent. He flipped pages and told me which ones were kind and which ones pretended. That evening, after Daniel took him home, I sat on the porch with a blanket, and Mr. Parker ambled over with a bag of screws like a bouquet. "Your gate sip's been complaining," he said. I shut it up. We worked in companionable silence. He tightened. I held. The gate sighed like a man after soup and sat better in its hinges. He leaned on the post, eyes doing that gentle patrol neighbor's eyes do. "Blue sedan scared off," he said casually. "It learned our street isn't a buffet," I replied. He laughed a soft bark. "You give the precinct any pie?" "Pecan," I said. "They earned nuts." He nodded, pleased with the order of the universe. Then his face tweaked. "You hear about Mrs. Alvarez? Granddaughter Sip's boyfriend selling her tools out the back?" I had not. Tools are memory with handles, and the thought made my molars press together. "You talked to her?" She said she was letting him clear space. "Seth," he said, grimacing. "Space for what?" I asked. She didn't say. We looked at each other across the narrow fence of the sentence between us. "Bring her by," I said. "I have a camera that looks like an angel and a list that makes people behave. We can lend both." 2 days later, Mrs. Alvarez sat at my table with hands that shook until they found the teacup, and then remembered they'd held children in grief and Thanksgiving turkeys. Her eyes were wet in the corners, not from tears, from sheer usage. "I don't want to get him in trouble," she said. Which is what women say when they are so trained to apologize for preferring oxygen. "You want to get your life back," I said. "Trouble can go find itself." We didn't scheme. We didn't need to. We made the calls and escorted her through the same boring, beautiful steps. A report, a rude conversation turned calm by a uniform at the door, a young man called by his first and last name until he remembered he had both. I lent her the angel for a week, and when she brought it back, she touched its chipped nose like a blessing. "She saw me," she said, and I realized she meant herself more than the camera. Word travels like soup smell. The church ladies began showing up with questions and casseroles and stories that started with, "I think," and ended with, "I wasn't sure." We didn't form a club. We formed a habit. We made a checklist and photocopied it. Spare phone, neighbor on call, one document in the bank, one in the lawyer's drawer, a small camera, a bigger voice. We tacked the list on the bulletin board between lost mittens and a flyer for self-defense classes that had too many exclamation marks. I crossed out 5 of the exclamation marks with my pen. One is enough. The day leaves began to turn the color of good butter. The lawyer called with a tone that meant he had small news that mattered. "The order has been served and acknowledged," he said. "That's legal for 2 doors learned new manners." He also said a phrase that made me sit straighter: restorative petition. It meant a judge was willing to let people try to repair their arrangements like tents after a wind, with conditions, with supervision, with everyone's hands visible. It wasn't forgiveness. It was scaffolding. I told him I liked that word better. He laughed like a young man who hasn't had his first back spasm yet and said he'd put it in the margins. That afternoon, the doorbell rang and my body did that quick scan. It does now before greeting anyone. I checked the side window and saw Lena, not in apology colors this time, in ordinary clothes that made her look like someone's neighbor and not like a headline. I opened the door as far as the chain allows and held her with my eyes, not my arms. "You can welcome someone without inviting their habits." "We got the papers," she said. I followed them. I sit here like they told me to be with an appointment, with nothing in my hands, with my car parked on the street, not the drive. She had learned sentences that kept doors calm. "That counts." "Come in," I said. "Table, not couch." She sat straight, palms flat, as if the wood could write what they said. She did not ask for tea. She did not touch the bowl of apples. "I sup in a group now," she said. Not like a club, like a room where women talk about power without pretending it's Sep's love. How Sep's that going? It's Sep's loud, she said, and a corner of her mouth flickered. I Sep in trying to get used to how much of my life is a habit I mistook for a personality. Not everyone gets that far. I nodded once. Noah? He's okay, she said. And the first true softness touched her face. He asked why he can't have 3 Christmases if we're all going to different houses. I told him one at my place, one at his dad's, one at Grandma's, if she invites him. She looked at me then like she was standing on a dock waiting for a rope to be thrown. He has a chair here with his name worn into it, I said. It would be rude of me to ignore the furniture. She exhaled a almost sob and then caught it before it embarrassed her. Thank you, she said, for letting me do this the way paper asks. We talked boundaries like a weather report. We wrote them down like a grocery list. We both signed the list because sometimes a small signature holds a bit of chaos in place. When she left, she stood on the porch and said, without turning around, I don't know if I'll ever be the wife he wanted, but I can be the mother our son needs. It wasn't a promise, it was ambition. I prefer ambition. It requires work. After she drove away, the house did not blink. It didn't need to. There are certain days, the quiet says more. In November, I hosted a safety workshop at the community center because the church basement was taken by the youth group, who needed the good chairs for a play about a whale. I brought cookies because people tell the truth if their mouths are occupied. Officer Mills came, hat under his arm as always, and talked about permits and papers, and the polite words that ask impolite questions. A young woman from a nonprofit explained how to talk to banks without letting your throat choke on shame. Mr. Parker stood by the door and complimented Coates to keep people lingering long enough to take a handout. When it was my turn, I didn't preach. I told my story short, and then I told them the part that mattered, the moment the lock sounded like a decision, the moment I decided not to panic, the moment the angel watched. I said, record if you can, but even if you can't, write the scene in your head in complete sentences. People behave better when you put verbs on them. They laughed at that, and then wrote it down anyway. We practiced saying no in voices that didn't apologize. We practiced saying yes with terms. We practiced the 3 blinks on the light switch until it looked like a disco, and the center director came out and asked if we were summoning moths. I told him maybe we were, and that moths can be useful if you teach them a route. Winter arrived with its busy shadows and its old furniture creaks. On the first snow, Noah drew letters with his finger on the fogged window and announced that the house was writing back. I told him to clean the glass after, because magic makes streaks. Daniel learned how to be alone on Thursdays and sometimes cried into the freezer aisle over a bag of peas, and then called me and we talked about peas for 20 minutes, and he felt better. Lena texted a picture of a silly hat on Noah's head with one sentence beneath that said, "He's roaring again." We arranged pickups with more care than diplomacy, and 1 piece a week at a time. It was not tidy, it was honest. On a bright cold day in January, I took the angel down and changed her position, not because I was hiding anything, because I wanted her to see different. She faced the door instead of the workbench. When Mr. Parker noticed, he asked if we were expecting company. I told him we always are. He said he'd polish his porch chair. He is a man who thinks readiness is a kind of chair polish. And I agree. In February, a thin letter with no return address arrived. Inside was a simple apology. Not a grovel, not a justification. 4 sentences. I read them twice. They were Tom's. The last one said, "I am getting a different job." I went outside, looked up at the brisk white sky, and told it out loud that I approved. A crow on the wire cawed like it was taking minutes. Spring poured itself over the neighborhood like a jar of warm honey. Babies in strollers, teenagers on curbs, the scent of soil doing its old magic trick. I planted tomatoes in a row 2 straight and laughed at myself. Daniel teased, then came with a string and 2 sticks and showed me how to make the row as imperfect as the garden wants. We argued amiably about whether eggshells make any difference. Noah buried half a plastic T-Rex near the marigolds and told me it would grow. I told him to water it. He did, very seriously. And I thought about the things my generation watered on faith. One evening in late May, I walked past the pantry and half heard a sound that used to undo me, the click of a lock. I stopped, listened. It was nothing, a jar settling, the house breathing. My shoulders didn't rise, my palms didn't sweat. I stood right there between flour and sugar and spoke to the air. I know the difference now. And I do, between locks that keep you and locks that keep for you, between help and handling, between family and proximity, between stories told about you and the one you tell clean into a camera's little red dot, or a neighbor's waiting ear, or a judge's brief attention. Sometimes I wake at night and listen to the old bones of the house complain, and I am grateful they complain. Quiet can be a trick. Noise tells you what's alive. I get up, wander the kitchen in the spill of street lamp light, and touch the angel's nose for luck, as if touching your own will do. If you came here now on a Sunday afternoon, you'd find a table with scratches earned the honest way, by forks and homework and impatience. You'd find a bowl of apples exactly where apples want to be. You'd find a camera not hidden anymore because there's nothing coy about being careful. You'd hear laughter that forgets itself and returns, and the neighbor's obvious throat clearing from his porch when a car he doesn't know lingers. You'd see a piece of paper taped inside a pantry that sounds like a grandmother, and a judge wrote it together. I am not a hero. I am a woman in a house that learned my handshake. I am a mother whose son learned, finally, that choosing me wasn't choosing against anyone. It was choosing the floor he stands on. I am a grandmother who teaches a child to blink a light for fun and for help, and knows both are true. I am a person who hides cameras inside chipped angels and calls it fashion. If you ever hear the click, I hope you have an angel that blinks, a neighbor who watches, a voice that does not lose itself. I hope you remember to sit before you stand, to plan before you panic, to hold a screwdriver even if it's only for grip. I hope you have someone to call who answers on the second ring and says your name like gravel, and a kettle that knows when to hush and when to sing. The last thing I'll tell you is small. It happened yesterday. I was coming up from the basement with a jar of peach preserves. The door swung, the latch touched home, and in that half second, when it might have sounded like the old click, the porch light across the street blinked once, twice, a pause. Mr. Parker, old fool, practicing the handshake, in case I was. I stood there in the doorway laughing like a woman whose life hands her a joke with a bow. I flicked my kitchen light 3 at night, 1 in day. The house and I said hello to each other the way we do. Then I put the peaches on the table and set plates out for whoever came hungry, because that's what you do in a home that remembers exactly and forgives on schedule.